Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to have a great discussion, and then next is a networking break. So you love standing between snacks after all this food talk, right? So great. I'm so excited to be here with Brigette. Well, we've had some great conversations over the last couple of days, and really excited to extend them to the room. Brigette is a phenomenal marketing leader, a national marketing leader, but certainly so well known here in Chicago, given all the great brands you've worked with. So I would love to just give you a little bit of context from both the world that I come from and the world that Brigette comes from. But why don't you start by just sharing a little bit about your background before you came to Mochi.
So thank you all for having me here. What is super cool is coming back to these events because it's like a reunion over the years. I'm from Chicago, I live in the suburbs, and I started my career first in investment banking, actually in New York and then overseas. And then I made the career switch to marketing. And so I'm a classically trained marketer from Kraft through Mondelez, where I spent over 20 years. And in January, I made the jump from super big to small. In fairness, I had worked on some really mega brands, and my last stint at Mondelez was leading Snap Futures. So startup brands and Perfect are very dear to my heart as being adventure. So seeing that scale and so much that was just talked about, and I was like, I could pair it on like every one of those points, which we can talk about even later what it means to be at Mochi.
Awesome, thanks so much. And so I'm a co-founder of Public Good, and so I wanted to kind of explain what we do so you understand the context that I come from. And so we're an AI for good purpose marketing platform. We engage consumers in a brand's good. The way we do it is the fun part. So do you know that feeling when you're reading a news article or content about anything from how teenage girls are suffering from anxiety due to social media, or good Lord, our air quality, what's happening to it over the summer, or what's happening to plastics in our ocean? I don't know, if anyone ever felt that feeling of just like, what, this is worse than I thought it was, what can I do to make a difference? And also sort of like, who's working on this issue? So in that moment, when you feel that way, we serve actions that you can take to make a difference on what you just heard about. So I'm sure you've all seen this in the wild. We're on everyone from CNN to Guardian to Oprah.com, really making news and content actionable so people can make a difference in that moment. And then we empower brands to sponsor actions on the things they're working on, whether that's DEI, sustainability, or more broadly their purpose. So the lens I come to the purpose world with is a lot of data behind how people respond to messaging, to positioning, what purpose does to the consumer. So I'm really excited today to chat about more about kind of the purpose landscape, and especially coming back out of Cannes, there's just so much kind of top of mind issues and topics to dig into so we can all do a more effective job around the purpose space. So with that in mind, before we jump into Mochi, I feel like a lot of times kind of the world of cause marketing and purpose marketing are kind of convoluted and are treated as if they're interchangeable, and they're really not. And I would love kind of your perspective on that and that definition, because as we kind of head into this day around purpose, I think it's worth taking a step back to kind of, not only what is purpose, but what is the difference between purpose and cause, and how should we think about that?
It's a great question, because I think one thing that we've talked a lot about in prep for this panel is how heavy does your purpose have to be? Like how deep? We'll talk about Mochi, and for those who don't know, I should probably just even back up. Mochi is ice cream wrapped in a Tululi rice dough. It's a Japanese heritage that got fused with an American joy. So we can talk about the product. But purpose for me, and this was important, it's your true north of what this brand stands for, and kind of it guides and filters a lot about what you do, what you create, how you communicate. And again, we'll talk about it, doesn't have to be super deep. Mochi didn't have one. We actually had a backstory of a Japanese immigrant and her family and all of those things. Not as, I would say, heartstrings is perfect, but even at the end of that conversation, we're like, we have to figure out what our purpose is. Because as a brand, that will help guide you on a lot of things. If you think of B Corps, like that is everything that they do, right, through and through. Cause marketing, to me, it's like an activation of a campaign. We're going to get behind something. Something's happening, and we're going to reinforce, our platform and voice to that. We heard about activism earlier. Activism, same thing. In some brands, that might be their thing. Like, we are always going to be the activists and the voice and the champion.
Like Ben and Jerry's.
Ben and Jerry's, Planned Parenthood. Like, certain organizations are always going to be in the fight. Most brands are just trying to sell their product.
That's really helpful. And that's just a kind of a great segue into, why do you think purpose is important? We've talked a lot about, all big brands have purpose, and then it's kind of harder for smaller brands, and it's scary, and it's difficult and all those things. So you heard a lot from the amazing data from Edelman around what purpose does for trust and how valuable trust is. But I still want to back up and say, but why is it important? Like, should we be prioritizing it? Is it a nice to have? Is it a must to have? What's your perspective?
For me, it's the foundation of a brand. We talk about brand pillars and what you stand for, why the brand has the credibility to speak the way it does or to do the things that it does. And so for me, it's to that. So let's actually give an example because it makes sense. When we came in, if you go back to historically my Mochi's advertising, it didn't sit well with me. And then when I heard who we were targeting, like, that doesn't sound right either. And so we did a lot of consumer research to understand who are our consumers, and there's these walk on the fun side families. You have Gen Z and boomers are in there too, but there was a core. And then when we started saying, well, what do we bring when they talk about our product? They kept saying it's fun, it's exciting, it's this, it's that. It brings a smile. The first bite's weird, but then you love it, and you see them light up, and like, there's a joy. And we have a heritage coming from LA, and we're a cold product, so there was this wonderful tagline and phrase, joyfully chill, that we've landed on of late. When I say to people, most people, it's like, I like that. Like, you get the vibe.
It's
like
in the head nods. Yeah.
And so your purpose can be a corporate word, right? They come back from my bigger place of generosity or freedom or authenticity and inclusion or sharing. But it also can be just simple, like, of a pleasure, and we bring joy to the world. And we'll talk about, right, I think most of our, like, it's kind of an important thing at the state of the universe now. But it helps guide us, and it feels, when you get it right, you're like, well, that makes sense. And so now our tone, the way we show up, the type of videos you'll start seeing should reflect that vibe that we want you to connect to it. And that's the heart of marketing, right? There's a product that you deliver over and over again that should delight and require, or pull, repeat. But brand creates an emotional connection. And brand is what you want with consumers to say, why do they love me? Why am I so loyal to this one? Because they get me, or they bring something out in my life that I couldn't get elsewhere. And I think the purpose gives you that direction of where to play.
Oh, that's so helpful. So really, kind of, I love your comment about it's your true north. And then that makes it easier to sort of, or more streamlined to make decisions around what products we're going to have, where are we going to show up, how are we going to show up. That's so helpful. And you're very modest. I just want to double click on the concept that Mochi did not have purpose when you arrived, and you have been there just over 6 months and established and formed and purpose. Mochi, so hats off, big time. So, first of all, tell us about the process you went through. And I really appreciate you sharing that. I wasn't that comfortable when I got there, that the position was just kind of like, this ice cream is weird. we can do better. And I think, joyfully chill is definitely so aspirational. But what process did you go through to kind of get there? And how was it received internally when you stepped up and said, hey, look, I think we need to pivot and do better? Because that's always hard, right? When you're sitting here in this room, like, how do we get buy-in?
Right, and I think what's super important is, as a marketer, we either love our work, we hate it, or we love the product, and it's the classic, you sit behind a focus group and we can have all the snickering going on behind the glass wall. But it doesn't matter what your snickering is, because those people are the ones that pay our bills. And it's really important to start with the consumer. And so that was the first step, is can we confirm who we should be talking to and who is buying our product? Because if you don't, and we couldn't answer that question every single time. I said, who's the consumer? And then they'd be like, it's gamers and anime. And I'm like, I don't think it is. I know gamers and they don't like powder on their fingers. They kind of don't get up and go to the store and they're watching videos. They watch our videos because they're watching videos. And so like you have to challenge while you're there. Right, but at the time, the marketers, like that was who they wanted to be in love. And it's not about me. I mean, we have a running joke in my house that it's about me. It's not about me, it's about the consumer. And what lights them up and their families and new experiences and sharing and exploring. So that was a really big piece. Then we took a little bit of, well, again, what does the product deliver? And we kept hearing this fun, exciting stuff. We looked at what do we have as assets internally that we can talk about, our heritage. Mochi is actually, Mochi ice cream is the ice cream in the dough, but Mochi itself comes from this rice flour that actually has these really cool functional qualities to it where it makes things a little bit chewier, the texture is a little bit sweeter. So as we thought about like, where do we go in product lines, we're going to be launching waffles and expanding that don't have ice cream, but play on that chewy texture. What's also going to be consistent, that red thread no matter what. And so when you put all that together, and we worked with a great creative agency and strategist, Fortnite Collective, and gave them all the data, and like, this is who we are, so they were able to put it in like fun marketing speak of this, not just the demographics and all the statistics, but humanizing it. We got to a place that we were really happy with, this is who we want to talk to. And then it was playing out, okay, what do we stand for? Now, if I gave you the corporate speak, technically our purpose is, we make life's moments more colorful and fun because, right, Mochi, our dough is colorful, we've got this bright purple box. But if I said it to any consumer, they'd be like, what? Like, that's not as emotionally evocative. So this piece, and I think even when you were pushing me, you're like, that's an interesting purpose. We were like, but it's joy. And when we talk to consumers, we eat more of our product, you see the joy. And for us, this joyfully chill is also a state that you get, and I think the more that we kind of are marinating with it, it feels right. I just was completely laughing to before the pool party. We literally Tuesday did a pool party in Manhattan, and I'll be in LA next week, which is all about our summer chill and joyfully chill everywhere. And one of the elements was even an influencer commented, she's like, this was so nice. The music wasn't blasting. We could have a conversation and I could relax. And that's what it means to embed your purpose, that how you show up in every place should feel that way, not just your product, but the environment you create.
I love that. And just to double down on joy, I mean, joy's sort of always been important, but it was just really interesting to hear the data around vulnerability. And we think about how, it's really helpful to find joy when you're vulnerable. And we talked earlier about how that ladders up to, mental health and wellness, which is certainly top of mind today. So what a great purpose that it's so aspirational and so high up that it translates kind of over time, but also definitely in this moment. So,
well, and as we were talking, it's like on the journey, we just started. So we've just defined this. And so when you see our activations and bringing our purpose to life, we're in the beginning phase. And at that point, I would say we're at the superficial of like, let's just stand for it and show up as it. As we were talking, it's like, well, how do we, over time, make this actually more important to the conversations? Because it is, like the isolation, the mental health, the stress, financial, physical, there is a lot still going on. And connectivity and those simple moments of joy and having that breath and that, kind of joyfully chill moment is going to be even more and more important. It just manifests in different ways.
Love it. And thanks for so much insight into how you formed the strategy for, Joyfully Chill. Can you tell us a little bit about, it's, as you said, it's new days, but how are you thinking about execution? Because that's always the kind of scary part, right? Like, how do you bring this to life in a way that you can kind of test and iterate? So we'd love to share your thoughts on moving forward with the execution piece.
Yeah, so there's a lot of the vibe, and again, it's a balance. It's an LA-based company, but some people have never been to LA. So we had a whole conversation. One of our media partners, her brother lives in Alabama, doesn't know what Mochi is, doesn't necessarily think it's a normal thing to be eating, and so we had to introduce him. But then he's also never been to LA. So if I said to him, like, it's this LA vibe, she's like, he doesn't know what that is. Like, a lot of us in this room, like, we know what New York feels like, we know what LA feels like, but most of the country doesn't know. And so the next question that we had, or she posed, is, what does Joyfully Chill look like in the summer outside the city? It's like people on their lake or on their porch. And so it's opening up that aperture of like, well, maybe our creative doesn't just have to be on the ocean and the beach. Maybe I can bring it out. And I joked at paddleboard. I told my group, I'm like, don't be surprised when Mochi comes out on the board in the middle of the lake this summer, because we're going to be joyfully chilling out there. But that's the piece, is how do you personalize also what that means, so that it's not one-dimensional to me, but to every consumer that can experience that wherever they might be.
Yes, when you say get to know your consumers, get to know your consumers, what does it all look like? Well, great. I love the insight. And let's take kind of a step back again to kind of look at the industry as a whole. And again, it was just such phenomenal data from Edelman this morning on what consumers are thinking and feeling. So I'd love to kind of take the conversation to what are marketers thinking and feeling. I mean, this is an unusually difficult time when it feels like purpose is a must-have, but at the same time polarization is real. And so there's a lot of challenges. And then as we're kind of watching brands react to this, is purpose getting lighter? Are brands not being vocal? We've had some big difficult moments for big brands that we know and love over the last couple months. So would love your perspective as a leading marketer.
It's hard. It's hard because you want to do good, right? There's that phrase, when you know better, you do better, and stamp, and I have two, well, now a freshman in high school and an incoming middle schooler, and there's not just the upstanders, it's the people who speak up, right? It's, you don't want society to continue, and it has gotten ugly. It has gotten very ugly, and the social media has taken its own training. And it's hard because at least for me, I always love speaking up for the underdog. I have a voice where I got lucky, where I was privileged in many areas, and even one of them being confident, right? Where I was okay talking to an adult if my friend's popcorn spilled over in the movie theater to get her an extra one. To speak up for those people, though, when there is so much anger and hate and pain, there's just a lot, it's all pain in one reflection or another. How do we help? How do we help prepare that? And that is hard because there's a delicate line of we've talked about certain big companies that took really, really heavy stakes in sustainability. And then the board was like, this isn't financially viable, and that person's out. And the response is, see what happens when you go down so far off. Like, yeah, but they were doing really good stuff for the planet. That's the challenge, because we're still in business. Like, unless someone's here in nonprofit, and if you are, bless you, it's hard. And it's hard to balance profit with purpose. And you've mentioned statistics. When you have a purpose, you tend to make more money because it gives you clarity and focus. But there is a tightrope of how much do you speak out, or what stand it is. I think the backlash it's wild to watch, and it's an absolute shame because it was just a beer or a store or a this or that. You don't want it, don't buy it. But the business was to sell more and to get more people. And I think this is where the piece vote comes in. How can you support and bring your purpose to life in ways that serve your brand and also serve the people in the communities that you do want to stand up for? Or at certain times, can I as a person with a platform take a stand? Someone commented to me about a year ago when they said, you've written some really provocative things out there. Now, I wasn't representing my brand, and I was representing me, and I guess if I read it far enough, someone might have taken it out of my company. But I was like, there are certain points in your life where it's just too darn important not to speak up. And those couple of points that I wrote that apparently were the lightning rods of the trolls that ensued, and I didn't read them, they were important enough to me. So that's a piece too for your business. Is it important enough to your business to speak out? Do so. If it's a way where we can start lighter and joy, and then we can progress to mental health and kindness and inclusion, we can go down that maturity as the brand grows.
Wow, thanks for that, and especially thanks for sharing your personal story around the lightning rod comment. Super appreciate that context as well. I know we're getting close to time, so I wanted to make sure to give y'all an opportunity to jump into our conversation. So I wanted to pause and see what questions we had in the room. Just got my 10-minute mark.
Shy movement first, but once you guys get going.
Go ahead.
I'm curious, just knowing that like Mochi is a newer, thing to the American market and not as familiar. How do you balance like communicating functional like taste expectations with like also bringing your purpose to life?
Yeah, and it's interesting. So my Mochi was one of the first in the 1990s to create this category, and then we've seen competitors come in. So it's not just how do I explain what the product is, but I have to explain now who the brand is. And so we're balancing both. The blessing and the curse of our brand, it's my Mochi, so the product inherently is in the brand, and then we have to just explain why my Mochi is better than ABC's Mochi and someone else's there. So we're just balancing our communications in certain places, like in markets. We started doing a Heartland campaign of just, can we start targeting people who wouldn't be as familiar to get them to raise their hand on our website, which we can see of where they clicked, like where to buy, where they're coming in from. And we see this huge emergence coming in through the center of the country. Those ads tend to be more like, what is my Mochi? Or our videos in TikTok explaining it. And then in other places, we can do more lifestyle and push it further.
Brigette, I love that you built out the brand purpose in such a short time that you've been with My Mochi, so kudos to you. As far as finding the right consumer, because you mentioned, well, I don't think it's gamers and all these people. How did you even begin to think about like the recruitment criteria for like market research, since like it's like starting out of nowhere and having to cast such a wide net to even find that consumer to then pluck out that insight? What did that process look like?
So one way is find your buyers. So who are the people that say in the past 6 months I've bought this? And there's a ton of tools on there, whether it's Susie with a big number, we had Buzz back do a study at Quantum then as well. So that was one piece, is like, who are buying? But I'll be honest, before that, I started talking to people and they were like, oh, what company did you join? And I'm like, My Mochi. And like, what is it? And some people are like, oh, you can ask Bobby. And you're like, oh, I love that, I do that. And then I would look at you. I'm like, no. Like, do you buy it for you? No, my kids told me they had it at sushi, or they had it at a friend. Or no, I've always loved it because I've always like grew up with it, or a friend of mine. And you start looking at those people and you're like, what does that person look like? And what does their home look like? And when did they learn about it? And I'm like, these are the stories that jive with who we were talking to. So we talk about like big brands and small brand marketing. This does not have to be any of this big budget research. Go to your freezer. And I used to do some pizza. We would go stand in front. I worked in a craft pizza company, and you would just stand, or someone would have Red Baron, and you'd be like, how come you didn't buy Tombstone? Or why do you like Red Baron? And is that product good? Like, do you like that? And you can also, don't dress in your suit at Jewel, but go like a human, and put a cart in front of you also, because it helps to look like a shopper, and ask and say like, oh my gosh, that stuff good. Or like, I see you're buying Plenty. Have you ever tried My Mochi? And they'll be like, I don't know what that is. Or they'll say, yeah, but it wasn't on sale this week. So again, as I started hearing about who was buying it, it was like I had a hypothesis of like, I don't think this is the right trend. Same thing with purpose. Like, we could do it fast because you don't have to overthink it. And look, it may evolve over time. We may get deeper. We may say it's this. When we first started, like January 3rd, when I first started, I was like, My Mochi, my moment. You have to chew it. There's a calming. And I was like, people eat it frozen, like rock hard. Other people let it get super squishy and like milkshakey. I was like, maybe it's how to eat My Mochi. So you'll see there's a campaign that we were shooting earlier in the year that's coming to it. I kept thinking maybe it's about that and self-expression, and it could have been, the joyful pleasure seemed to animate more of what consumers end up telling us of why they like this product so much.
I have a question. Do you find that a price point makes a difference?
Yeah, so you asked about pricing. Pricing does make a difference, and we've taken like so many companies a price point, and then we saw an impact. So we're managing through that. The economy still hasn't recovered. We are a tertiary category. You get the milk, butter, eggs, and then you get the Oreos. To go get ice cream is kind of mainstream. To go get a novelty is less so, and to go get mochi ice cream is like. So we have to work hard to justify why we do what we do.
So you really have to like single out that audience that is willing to spend.
As in the audience, I had to hear like what was important to them. So we're changing things on packaging, things that we always were, but making them more pronounced. It's naturally gluten-free. There's no preservatives. It's non-GMO. It's a clean portion control. It's 80 calories. Like then you start bringing those to life in a more prominent way too. So every element of the research we could activate on.
Thinking about defining your core consumer and knowing that ranges from a kid to the purchaser to the whether, how are you defining your media mix spans into broad generations?
Yeah, so you asked about media mix, and once you define your consumer, how do you go? Maybe just because I have a heritage of backup of marketing to children that we are cautionary, but I do find it's mostly adults, it's a more sophisticated piece. So when we heard our consumer, it's 24 to 54 is the core and with kids. But there's plenty of Gen Z that like love the product. So it's this balance of is your marketing kind of stretched, and you see it in the AI commercials. We have a video that's a tailgate, it's like 20 somethings. We have a video of a mom has her mochi and gets her dance break in the kitchen. Different demographics, they'll get served differently, but they both are about that same kind of emotional feel.
You mentioned product extendability of Mochi and an innovation that you guys are planning. I'm curious how you threaded purpose into that development, knowing that you were involved in the features work at Mondelez, if I remember, and how you brought that experience, or in any ways you tried to insert that throughout your product development.
So the first question I ask is, why are we doing this? And I've asked it many times. Like, some stuff was already in the works, and then I was like, why? Like, why does anyone care? What consumer needs does it serve? And then we did some research, and we got a little bit lucky that there actually was a snackability component, and people liked this, and they thought it was disruptive, and so there was a working there. We have another product that I said, I want to understand how this fits in their lives. We just did some focus groups, and it was very clear that where we wanted to put it in store needs to change, and there were benefits. But as they were eating it, even someone said, this is really fun, like pulling this. And I was like, oh, that's it. Like there's that fun and that joy of eating this, and it lights them up. And so the colors and the way we're gonna showcase that product to come, hopefully when you see it, you're like, oh, that makes sense.
We're coming up on time, but you ladies in the corner have been so patient, so we'll get to you as quickly as we can. Go ahead.
Purpose writing everything that a brand does in terms of that DNA component, how do you set up a purpose and communicate that internally to make sure that it's sustainable from like a long-term perspective that it lives on?
Great question, because this goes to culture in general. And I will say, there was artwork, there still is artwork, so we're based out of Vernon, California, which is where our plants, our headquarters and plant are one and the same. And, you know, that was, is that getting funky. Like, did anyone notice that image on the wall? Like, is it just me? Am I old? But it seems really weird. And it's just like, not weird in a good way weird. Like weird and offensive, yuck, weird. Took it down. So there was, you know, I have a team that's, you know, very open. A week later, people were coming up to our CEO commenting how grateful they were that that was no longer there. And you can talk about that's like D&I perspective or whatever, but it also spoke to who are we, that I want our plants, so we've shared all of the images with sales. Every photo shoot we do, every video we do, we share it with the sales team. We've shared it with the operations team so that they can then choose what images and posters they want to put about the plant. And so we really want to infuse that culture throughout. And it starts, you know, if you're setting it at the top, it's going to start at the top, but then if you can't keep it locked up in a little box, you got to share it and spread it.
Great, well, I think it's time for coffee and snacks, but before we head there, we'd love you just kind of give a takeaway that you'd like to share with everybody given our conversation.
I think the main takeaway for anyone is it's really powerful. It doesn't have to be super complicated. It doesn't have to be perfect either. It's a journey, so try something. If it feels right, you can evolve it over time. And then back to budgets. Like, you can be really scrappy with how you learn this and experiment and see.
Awesome. And then I just build on that and add to that to say, I've often at the C-level conversations, when, moments get difficult and there's this debate, with corporations and brands of, do we speak out or do we stay quiet? And I think here's the thing with purpose. It's everything we said. It's hard, it's difficult, it's challenging, there's risk. But you can't not communicate what you're doing to consumers because of the data you've seen from Edelman. It is a must-have. But the good news is the best practices around taking the long game, being authentic to what you've done, being relevant to the consumer, those wrap you up in a place where you're in a good position to communicate to consumers. And if there's a bit of, if there's a bit of spark here and there, that's okay because you'll be good in the long game. As long as you're anchored on that kind of authenticity and relevancy. So, great. And the final thing I'll say is, if your brand feels like your social good is your best kept secret, I'll be here all day. Would love to chat to you. Or if you just like to chat about anything we chat about today, myself and my colleague Wendy are here as well. So enjoy the rest of the day and the purpose.